Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Shimmy, and welcome to That's What I Call Soccer, your best place for 2023 MLS fantasy content. On today's episode, we're going to be doing a review of the top players from the 2022 season from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, there's a bunch of top players from around the league that won't make this list, and it's not because we don't like those players or because we don't rate those players. It's simply because certain players are good at certain things, and those certain things don't always translate well over to fantasy. So again, if you don't see a player on this list, it's because we're solely looking at the top players points-wise from a fantasy perspective from last season. Here's a quick rundown of all the details for this video. I go over most of these points more in depth in part 1, so if you need an explanation, be sure to pop over and check that video out. Moving right along with the midfielders, at number 10, we got Austin FC's Diego Fagundes, a $9.9 million midfielder. He played 34 games throughout the year, had 6 goals and 14 assists, 14 bonus points on top of that for a total of 191 points. Number 9 is Orlando City's Facundo Torres. He played 33 games for a total of 9 goals and 10 assists, totaling 193 points throughout the season. Number 8's Lewis Morgan. He was a really frustrating one for me. It feels like every time I had Lewis Morgan in my team, he just never hit. That being said, he did well enough to be the 8th best midfielder in fantasy last year, totaling 195 points off of 14 goals and 4 assists. Number 7, Lucas Zelarayan. 28 games, 9 goals, 12 assists with 70 bonus points for a total of 206 points. He wasn't healthy for all of the year last year. I'm interested to see what Nancy can do in Columbus. I think they've got a few missing pieces. But Zelarayan. Number 6 is a really interesting one. Emmanuel Ray Noso. He had 29 games last year for a total of 10 goals, 11 assists, 78 bonus points, and 212 points throughout the entire year. But if you didn't know, Reynoso hasn't been in training so far this year. And there really hasn't been much as to indicator as to why or where he might be. But today we got a statement from Minnesota United FC on their socials that says Emmanuel Reynoso has been suspended without pay by Major League Soccer for failure to report to preseason training. We have no additional information beyond that at this time. It doesn't sound good for Emmanuel Reynoso. It definitely doesn't sound like he's going to be there for game week 1. Moving to the top 5, we got FC Cincinnati's Lucho Acosta. I think he was one of the leaders in assists last year, 10 goals and 19 assists with 69 bonus points through 30 games, totaling 227 points. Him, Brenner, and Vasquez were a deadly front three. They were almost as comparable to Gazdag, Carranza, and Uwa up in Philadelphia. And he had a great year. He's one of my first picks for game week 1, no matter who they play. Just his ability to get on the ball and get those key pass bonus points and those assists. Even if he doesn't score, he's getting you some points. And that's why I like Acosta on my team. Number 4, we got Austin FC's Sebastian Driussi, one of the better players throughout the year, MVP candidate, Golden Boot race, $12.8 million midfielder, played all 34 games and had 22 goals and 7 assists. Doesn't get you very many bonus points. It's kind of interesting if you look at Fagundes. Fagundes had 47 bonus points. And the MLS MVP candidate Sebastian Driussi only had 42 bonus points. But that being said, he had 7.6 points per game, totaling 240 points over the season. He's got that ability to score multiple goals per game. Number 3, we got New England's Carlos Hill. He's another player like Acosta that just gets on the ball and spreads the ball around and gets all those key passes. He played 32 games, and in those 32 games, he had 7 goals and 13 assists. But the most impressive stat for Carlos Hill is he had 100 bonus points. He averaged 7.66 points per game for a total of 247 points. And yeah, it was a pretty good year from Carlos Hill. I'm excited to see how New England and Carlos Hill are going to get on this year. He'll be another one at the top of my list for Game Week 1. Number 2, Phillies, Daniel Gazdag. We already talked about that trio. That's similar to the one at FC Cincinnati. He played all 34 games last year and was just off the Golden Boot. He had 22 goals and 10 assists, 34 bonus points. Doesn't get many bonus points, but has a pretty good assist record with that front three. I think it's interesting to note here that FC Cincinnati and Philly are one of the only two teams in the league that play with a striking duo with two strikers up top, and I think that's why you see the likes of Gazdag and Acosta getting so many assists and so many goals. Yeah, it's interesting, and you see that with their strikers as well. They're also getting assists. So, 255 points from Gazdag, pretty good year. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if he can match that. And the whole Philly team, they had such a historic year last year, and I always wonder if teams can match their record-breaking years. We saw that with New England, last year. They couldn't quite match what they did the year before. But we'll see if they can bounce back, and we'll see how Philly shakes out this year. And number 1, we got Nashville SC's Hani Mukhtar, the MLS MVP, $17.9 million midfielder. He played 32 games, won the Golden Boot with 23 goals and tacked on 11 assists with that, had 81 bonus points, so he is going to get you some bonus points on top of those attacking returns, and had an average of 8.88 points per game, totaling 284 points throughout the season. Great year from Mukhtar. Honorable mentions from the midfield, we got Nico Ladero from Seattle FC. He had 28 games for 7 goals and 11 assists, totaling 187 points. The reason he's on my honorable mentions list is Seattle played in Champions League last year, and if you're not aware, Champions League has a lot of weight on how teams do in MLS. Oftentimes there's a lot of rotation there, and I think with that and how much Seattle struggled in MLS last year, Nico having 187 points over 28 games that's a fair shout from Nico. And number 2, we got Ricky Puig, 8 games, 3 goals and 5 assists. He had 33 bonus points in those 8 games, and across those 8 games he averaged 9.5 points per game. So 76 points over 8 games. He's definitely someone that is going to be at the top of my list for Game Week 1. And the last honorable mentions in the midfield, another LA Galaxy product, Gaston Brugman, 5 games, 3 goals, 1 assist for 38 points. And our last top 10 to go through here is the forwards. At number 10, we got LA Galaxy's Chicharito. Played 31 games, had 16 goals and 2 assists. Only had 18 bonus points, but totaling 158 points throughout the year. In number 9, we got Montreal's Romel Kyoto, who played 30 games over the season for 15 goals and 6 assists, totaling 159 points throughout the year. Number 8, we've got Talles Magno from NYCFC. It's a pretty cheap option at $7.4 million last year, and he played all 34 games. He scored 7 goals and 10 assists last year for a total of 162 points. I would expect Talles to be one of the better players on NYCFC this year with all the players that they've had, shipped out. But we'll have to see how NYC fares the first couple weeks and how they line up and see if they've got the same offensive spark that they've had in the last couple of years. Number 7, we've got Philadelphia's Julian Carranza. First year playing in Philadelphia, and he got on really well after having a bad couple seasons in Miami. He played 31 games and had 14 goals and 9 assists for a total of 173 points. I'm excited to see what Julian's second year in Philadelphia can look like. I think him and Ua are going to have a great year. Trio of him, Ua and Carranza was dynamic last year, and I think it's going to get even better this year, especially if they can keep Kai Wagner in Philly for one more year. Number 6, we've got Brenner from FC Cincinnati, $10.9 million forward, played 29 games, had 18 goals and 6 assists for a total of 175 points, and an average of 6.03 goals per game. Him and Vasquez and Lucho just lit the league up last year, and if you were able to fit Brenner, Vasquez, Lucho, Carranza, not so much but Gazdag in there. You had a really good attacking return almost every week if you had those guys in there. And to wrap up this video, we got forwards number 1 through 5. At 5, we've got San Jose's Jeremy Ebobisse. He played 32 games and had 17 goals and 3 assists for San Jose, who's not a great team. I think they've made some pretty good moves this year, and they've got some pretty good pieces that need to mature and kind of come into their own that I think can take them up a step this year. 176 points last year is a pretty good shout, and was good enough to get him into 5th place. Number 4, we've got Carlos Vela. This one's really interesting because there was so much debate last year on not putting Vela in your team and it not being worth it because of the rotation risk. He starts a lot of games, he plays a lot of games, and he gets pulled in a lot of games. Not a lot, but he gets pulled in a decent amount of games. But in the games that he does play, he had 12 goals and 12 assists and 41 bonus points for a total of 189 points throughout the season. He averaged 5.91 points per game, which is pretty good and good enough to get him 4th in the top 10 list overall from last season. Number 3 is Colorado's Diego Rubio, $11.8 million, and he played 30 games last year for a total of 16 goals and 7 assists. Had a grand total of 191 points throughout the season, just shy of hitting that 200-point mark, but a very good year from Diego, despite Colorado's troubles. I got to admit, he's not someone I had in my team very often. So if you were caught on to how good Diego was playing all last year, fair shout to you. Number 2, Jesus Ferreira from FC Dallas. 33 games, 18 goals, and 6 assists for a total of 198 points. Pretty good year from Jesus, but not good enough to take the number 1 spot, as number 1 was FC Cincinnati's Brandon Vasquez. Played 33 games for a total of 18 goals, 9 assists, and 205 points overall. Great year for Brandon Vasquez, and again, that duo of Brenner, Vasquez, and Lucho Acosta is just deadly. I'm definitely going to have at least 1 or 2 of those players in my week 1 lineup, depending on matchups. And lastly, just to wrap up this video, I just wanted to make a best 15 from all the players from last season. Basically, what I did here is, and if you're new to the game, you can only have 3 players max from one team. And I kind of ran into some issues here with Philadelphia. I didn't want to just put all 3 Philadelphia defenders in the back line. But the way I wanted to do this was I wanted to set this up as if you had set your lineup in week 1 and kind of forgotten about it. And if you had put in the most optimal lineup week 1 and left it, how you would do in comparison to the rest of the league. So in goalkeeper, we got Andre Blake, defense, Andrew Brody, Diego Palacios, and Kai Wagner. You got a 5-man midfield of Sebastian Driussi, Hani Mukhtar, Lucho Acosta, Daniel Gazdag, and Carlos Gil. And then you got 2 forwards in Brandon Vasquez and Jesus Ferreira, and your bench wrapping up with Zach McMath, Diego Rubio, Jonathan Mensah, and Dwan Jones. So if you had this lineup through the whole year and put the captain on Hani Mukhtar, who had the most points out of the whole league last year, you would only have totaled 2,726 points, and that gets you absolutely nowhere close to the top of the league here. You can see the top 10 leaderboard here, and the top player ranking in at over 3,300 points. And so we're almost 600 points off of that. by just picking the best players in the league and leaving them in every week. And I think what I want to show with that is that you can't just pick the best players week in and week out and expect to be the best player. Sometimes you've got to pick those differentials, and you've got to pick those less owned players who are going to do a little bit better than the best players in the league on that game week. They may not do as well over the season, but there are going to be those players that have, a 4-goal week out of nowhere, and if you've got them in your team for those games, your rank's going to go up. So I think that's what this really shows, is that you can't just rely on the best players throughout the entire season, and you've got to be make some decisions and take some chances and some punts on some players and try to get those differentials and try to highlight those players. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys found this useful. I hope you can take something from this and use it for your strategy for game week 1 coming up here. We'll have more on that soon. If you like this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe. We'll have weekly content on this type of stuff. Until next time. Thanks.